When we first moved into what was meant to be our dream home, I was filled with hope and excitement. My husband and I had worked tirelessly to make this a reality, and it felt like the beginning of a beautiful new chapter. But what I didn't realize was that beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life, cracks were forming. Cracks that would soon threaten to shatter the very foundation of everything I thought we had built together. The early days. Our marriage began like many others, full of love and optimism. We started in a modest one-bedroom apartment, planning for our future. We were both determined to save up and buy a home of our own. My husband, who often struggled with managing finances, left most of the budgeting and saving to me. I didn't mind. I saw it as my contribution to our shared dream. Every penny saved felt like a step closer to that house we would call our own. But as our savings grew, so did the involvement of his parents. Initially, they offered advice, which I politely accepted, thinking it was harmless. But soon, their involvement grew more intrusive. They began suggesting properties, offering to help with decisions that I believed should be made by my husband and me alone. The unseen influence. One day, my husband casually mentioned that his parents wanted to help with the construction of our home. They knew a builder, had connections, and could get us a great deal. While I appreciated the gesture, I was uncomfortable with the idea. I wanted our home to be a reflection of our tastes, our choices. But my husband, ever eager to please his parents, assured me it would be fine. Weeks passed, and as we visited properties and met with builders, I noticed a pattern. My suggestions were often dismissed, and my husband's parents began taking the lead in discussions. They even started making decisions without consulting me. One evening, my husband mentioned that his parents had found the perfect plot of land. They'd already talked to the builder, and everything was set. I was stunned. How had this happened without my input? My concerns were brushed aside. "They just want to help," my husband said. But it felt like more than that. It felt like they were taking over, the breaking point. As the construction began, so did the real nightmare. I received a call from the builder, asking me to confirm some last-minute changes. Confused, I asked what changes he was referring to. The design had been altered to accommodate not just us, but my husband's parents as well. They had assumed they would be moving in with us, without ever discussing it with me. I confronted my husband. "Is this true? Are your parents planning to live with us?" His response was cold, almost indifferent. "Yes, it makes sense for them to be close. They're getting older, and it's best if we all live together." My world spun. We had never discussed this. I felt betrayed, as if the home we were building had been stolen from me. The place I had imagined as our sanctuary was now being reshaped into something I didn't recognize, something I didn't want, the illusion of control. Despite my protests, the construction continued. My husband, driven by his desire to appease his parents, ignored my concerns. I tried to talk to him, to make him see how this was affecting me, but he was resolute. "You're being unreasonable," he would say. "This is what's best for the family." But whose family? I wondered. I felt like an outsider in my own marriage, watching helplessly as decisions were made without me. My once loving and supportive partner was now distant, dismissive, and almost unrecognizable. I reached out to my own parents, seeking advice and comfort. They were shocked by what was happening, but supported me in whatever decision I made. "You don't have to go through this alone," my mother said. "Remember, this is your life too." The day of reckoning. The house was finally completed, but instead of joy, I felt dread. Moving day was supposed to be a celebration, but it was overshadowed by the looming presence of my in-laws. They arrived early, taking charge as if it were their home. My husband's demeanor had changed too. He was now more authoritarian, demanding that I embrace my role as the perfect wife, a role that seemed to include serving his parents without question. The first weekend in the new house, my husband announced that he had invited colleagues over for a party. I was to prepare everything, and of course, his parents would be there to help. What was supposed to be a small gathering quickly turned into a full-blown event, with my in-laws playing the gracious hosts while I was relegated to the role of a servant. "Why can't you handle this?" my husband snapped when I hesitated. "It's just a party." But it wasn't just a party. It was another reminder of how little my wants and needs mattered. I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. Every weekend became a repeat of that first one: parties, guests, and my in-laws running the show while I was left to pick up the pieces. The unraveling. I tried to reason with my husband, to make him see how this was affecting me, but he refused to listen. Every objection I raised was met with the same response: "You should be grateful. My parents are helping us. Why can't you just accept it?" But I couldn't. I didn't want to live like this, in a house that felt more like a prison than a home. I was losing myself, suffocated by the constant demands and the complete disregard for my feelings. It became clear that my husband no longer saw me as his partner, but as an accessory to his life, one that could be molded to fit his and his parents' needs. One evening, after yet another exhausting day of preparations, I sat alone in the kitchen, the sounds of laughter and music filtering in from the living room. I felt a deep sadness settle over me, a realization that the life I had dreamed of was slipping away, replaced by something dark and oppressive: the final stand. I knew I couldn't continue like this. I had to make a choice, for my own sanity. I called my mother and told her everything, from the parties to the constant interference of my in-laws. She listened patiently, and then said something that struck a chord within me: "You have the right to be happy, to live the life you want. Don't let anyone take that away from you." The next day, I confronted my husband one last time. "This can't go on," I said. "We need to make changes, or I can't stay in this marriage." His response was chilling. "If you can't accept this, then maybe you should leave. My parents are more important to me than your complaints." Those words were the final blow. I realized then that the man I had married no longer existed, replaced by someone who saw me as an obstacle to his own ambitions. There was no partnership, no love left to salvage. The decision. With a heavy heart, I made the decision to leave. I packed my bags and returned to my parents' house, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. I had loved my husband once, but the person he had become was a stranger to me. The home we had built together was now just a shell, a monument to a life that could never be. I filed for divorce, and although my husband tried to convince me to stay, it was clear that his pleas were motivated by convenience rather than genuine remorse. He didn't want to lose the image of the perfect family, the house that was supposed to be a symbol of his success. But I knew I couldn't go back. I couldn't live in a place where I was constantly undermined and disregarded. The aftermath. The divorce was finalized quickly, and I moved into a small apartment close to my parents. It wasn't the grand house I had dreamed of, but it was mine, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. I started rebuilding my life, focusing on my career, and slowly regaining my confidence. As for my ex-husband, the last I heard, he was struggling to maintain the house on his own. Without my income and support, the financial burden became too much. His parents, once so eager to take control, now kept their distance, leaving him to deal with the consequences of his actions. Conclusion. Looking back, I realized that the house wasn't the dream I had imagined it to be. It was a facade, hiding the truth of a relationship that was built on shaky ground. I had been so focused on building a life together that I hadn't noticed the cracks forming beneath the surface. But in leaving, I found something far more valuable than a dream home. I found myself again. I learned that it's better to be alone and happy than to stay in a situation that drains your spirit. I now live a life of my own choosing, surrounded by people who truly care for me, and I've never been more at peace. The dream home may have been an illusion, but the lessons I learned will stay with me forever, and for that I am grateful.